The Mothman, a man-sized bird creature known for bringing a bad omen. Here's 3 encounter stories of this mysterious creature. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and let's all hope we don't see this creature tonight. Was it the Mothman? I find it ironic that I had just registered with your ghost stories to submit a possible ghost encounter that I recently had. And here, just a few days later, I have a completely unrelated story that involves an experience that my father had witnessed just last week. I'm sure many people have heard about the elusive Mothman, especially after the movie, The Mothman Prophecies. If not, the Mothman was a very tall 5 to 8 feet tall humanoid-type creature with bright glowing red eyes and large wings for which it uses to fly. It was most famous in the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where it was spotted most. While the town where I grew up and all of my family still resides was a small town in Ohio, maybe 20 minutes or so outside of Wheeling, West Virginia. I was talking to my dad on the phone just 2 nights ago and was telling him about my experience with my ghostly footprints. That's another story. And he asked me if he told me about the thing he saw last week while driving home from work. He then began to tell me what he had seen. My dad works the night shift for a coal mine in Monroe County, Ohio. While he was driving home from work early one morning, between 4 to 5 p.m., he noticed in the road this large creature crouched down in the road with bright red glowing eyes that looked directly at him. He said this creature also had very large wings, which were also kind of wrapped around it as it crouched in the middle of the road. He said as long as he lived, he had never in his life seen anything like this, and to be honest, it actually creeped him out. He proceeded to drive by it, and he looked behind him to see where it was at. And it was gone. He said he was actually scared to get out of his car when he got home, in fear that perhaps it had followed him or was even on his car. Luckily it wasn't, and he hasn't seen it since then. My dad has never heard of the Mothman, nor had he ever even seen the movie. He said that everybody he has described to right away said, "It sounds like you saw the Mothman." You hear stories like this all the time, and because you don't really know the person who witnessed it, whether you want to believe it or not, there is still a part of you that questions whether or not it is true. Knowing my dad, and what a logical thinker he is actually the one to try to come up with logical excuses for things that are otherwise unexplainable. He's very skeptical about things like aliens, UFOs, ghosts, etc., and for me to talk to him and hear him tell me about this Mothman-like creature was very shocking to me. For this is not like my father. There isn't a doubt in my mind that what he saw was 100% true. It has made me a believer when it comes to the Mothman. I will say that I am a little worried, for what I understand is that when people actually see the Mothman, often something very bad happens afterwards. I have done some research on this, and whether or not that fact is true about the Mothman, my findings are inconclusive. I hope, of course, for the sake of my father and my family, that isn't true. I was wondering if anybody else has ever witnessed or know of anybody who has ever witnessed or seen the Mothman. And if anybody has any other information about the Mothman, that may be helpful. Especially now after this incident, I am very interested in finding out everything I can about Mothman. Thanks for reading. Any comments or insight is, as always, very appreciated. Mothman or devil bird? Has anyone out there ever experienced, or know of someone who has experienced, seeing a large black winged figure flying around, and then having a close relative pass away after seeing this thing? There was a movie based on true events starring Richard Gere called The Mothman Prophecies that was about people who experienced seeing these creatures and then having something horrible happen afterwards. Well, my grandfather has twice seen one of these devil birds rise up out of the ground and fly off into the trees. And each time that he has seen one, a very close relative of his died within the next couple of days. I didn't witness it, but the last time my granddad has seen one, I was in the house when I heard him yell to my brother to go get his shotgun. I came outside, too late to see it, and that was when he described it as a huge black creature with wings that came out of the ground and flew through the trees. It looked like it should have been too big and would collide with the trees, but it basically flew into the trees and vanished. A couple days later, we found our granddad in the backyard crying uncontrollably. He had just found out that a relative he was very close to had died unexpectedly. Several years later, when I was in the military, I related this story to some friends and asked them if they had any similar experiences. One guy in the group mentioned that when he was a kid, he and some other kids were watching a TV program about the handicapped. Being ignorant kids, they spent a lot of time laughing at the people who had these various afflictions. After the program ended, they decided to go outside to play. By that time, it was dark outside. While they were standing around talking, he said he heard the flapping of wings and looked up to see this giant black bird-looking thing flying above them. It scared them so bad, they all ran back inside. I asked him if anything happened in his family after seeing this creature. He said that his grandmother soon died afterwards. I guess that seeing one of those Mothmen, or whatever they are, is an omen suggesting that something bad will occur. I hope I never experience it. Demon bird, whispering, and other scary happenings. Hello to all believers and non-believers. I've decided to share my story with all of you because I'm not sure what to do. And it's good to talk to people who share similar experiences. Let me start from the beginning. I was always interested in the paranormal world from ever since I can remember. I'm not sure why I took an interest in it. I suppose it's because it's the unknown. I find that type of stuff fascinating. I've had a few ghost and spirit experiences here and there, lights turning on and off, objects moving, hair pulling, strange noises, cold spots, etc. It never really bothered me, though it did often frighten my little sister growing up. I haven't had any ghost or spirit experiences for a while now, though she and my dad now claims they're still going off. The story I'm about to share with you still scares me to this day, and I'm suffering the consequences of my actions. It started about 6 months ago. A group of friends had mentioned that they were going to an old abandoned church graveyard and taking one of the lads' Ouija boards along with them. I immediately told them it was a bad idea and how they're dangerous. I was told to lighten up and take it for what it was, harmless fun, right? I decided to go along with them anyway for no reason than to make sure everything went smoothly. It was around 11:35 p.m. when we arrived at the abandoned church graveyard. Instantly, I had a bad feeling. But then again, I am in a graveyard in the dark with a Ouija board on a cold night. So they set everything up and had a play about it. I didn't take part. Everyone was laughing and accusing the other of moving the pointer to spell silly things like 7 days and hello. I just put it down to them being foolish and prating about. Around 35 minutes later, when they all decided to get serious with it, strange things started happening. They were having some sort of conversation with a man whose name began with the letter M, but they wouldn't say what his name was. They asked the obvious questions: how old are you, when were you born, and when did you die, etc. But after a while, we figured he was lying because when they repeated the questions to him, his answers changed. Admittedly, I did chirp in and ask a question or two. Anyways, things got pretty weird afterwards. The pointer began to move rapidly, and at least two of us, myself included, heard whispering sounds. If anyone else did, they denied it, but it wasn't in a language I could understand. Then there was the sound of a massive bird that sounded like it was right above our heads. The sound we all heard. After that, we just packed up and left. We didn't really speak about it the next day. I figured everyone wanted to forget, so I just left it alone. A few weeks later, I began experiencing some strange happenings at nighttime. At around 3:30 a.m. to 4 a.m., I'd wake up in the sound of a loud bird. It sounded like it was right outside my window. I didn't click on it at first, but the third night I realized it was the same sound as the one I heard in the graveyard. As the nights progressed, the sound got louder and louder. This would last for around 10 minutes per night. Here is where it gets really strange. About 5 days after waking up and hearing the sound of the bird, I finally plucked the courage up to look outside my window. As I open the blind, I see a big bird. I haven't a clue what it's called, not good with birds, sorry. With dark red eyes staring into my window. I quickly shut the blinds and hid under my duvet. As the nights progressed, I started to hear whispering again. Actually, it was more like chanting. I couldn't make out the language, but there was one word that kept being repeated throughout. Mulpus, or something like that. The only reason I remember is because as soon as it was over, I got up and wrote it down on paper. I still occasionally hear bird noises and whispering, but that's all it is. I haven't mentioned this to any of my friends. I figured if any of them were going through it, they would say first. Nothing physically bad happens to me. Like I don't get sleep paralysis or anything like that. I do have quite dark dreams that involve murder. That's about it. I'm just looking to see if anyone else has experienced anything like this and what advice you can offer, because while nothing has happened yet, it's still quite frightening and annoying. I just want rid of it. I'm not religious, so I doubt quoting the Bible will help. Thanks for reading, and I look forward to your response.